Hey everybody, my name is Amanda Sears and I'm the Horticulture Agent in Madison County, Kentucky. And we're going to talk to you today about a few things that you can do now in the fall to help with your garden and landscape next spring and summer. It's the first time I've done a Zoom training like this, so if you'll just be patient for a second, I'll get started. So it's been a crazy year so far. 2020 has been crazy, and just trying to think about next year and kind of plan for spring already. Things that I might grow my own garden and my own flower beds, and trying to think about things I can do now to maybe alleviate some stress and make things a little simpler. And an ounce of prevention is really worth a pound of the cure when it comes to gardening. And so often we talk about the importance of scouting our crops and gardens to find problems before they get too big. But this is looking at it a little bit deeper and in a way that we're preventing problems before they can even start. Throughout this presentation, I'm going to refer several times to my webpage through our office's webpage, and I've tried to put together a library of some short videos and some publications I have made, as well as several publications through the University of Kentucky. The first thing, just clean up debris from your garden. That is actually a zucchini that I had growing in my garden last year. As I was walking through the garden, I actually looked over and thought, what on earth are all those spots on that zucchini? And on a closer look, they were immature insects. And so, obviously that's overly mature, insect riddled, may even be starting to have some disease problems. And so for things like that, I need to remove those completely from the garden and do away with them altogether. I really don't even want to I don't really even want to compost those, because a lot of our compost piles are what I would consider passive. They're not turned, they're not really managed in a way that it heats up enough for diseases and insects to be killed. If you have a really active and hot compost, that might be different, but for most of us, including myself, that's not the case. Moving on, this is really looking at something that's more annual, that we would just remove the debris. But for things that are perennial, like trees and shrubs, sometimes they get these crazy spots on the leaves that look horrible, but ultimately it's not really that detrimental to the tree or shrub long term. So really, what I would do is rake up all the leaves at the end of the season and get them away from the tree. That way the inoculum, if there's for the diseases that are present, won't be there in the spring for it to reinfect. And again, I wouldn't put those in the compost pile either, for the same reasons. And one thing you might consider doing is having a compost pile for your garden area and for your landscape. And so, for instance, you wouldn't put this tar spot that's on a maple leaf into compost that you're making for your landscape, but you could put it in the compost that you're making for your garden, because those diseases wouldn't affect those plants. Just a thought, I hate to think of all this debris going unused, but for the safety of our gardens and our plants, we don't want to reintroduce anything that's going to cause problems. Cover crop is a really great idea, and it's something I've been learning a lot about recently. One question I got quite a bit this spring was, talking about people, why my garden seems tired. It's just not growing as well. Either plants aren't growing at all or they're stunted. And after having long conversations, we kind of figured out that they may be having a compaction issue. And so maybe that's from, because we naturally have clay soils here. Maybe it's because they used rototiller too much in the area, or when it was too wet they rototilled. So we can't magically fix that. We can't fix compaction, but we can kind of help to break that up, and one way to do that is using a cover crop. There are a lot to choose from, and I recently put a presentation on my website about that. one would be tillage radishes or things like turnips that would die out in the winter, and when they died back, then they would make tunnels for water to kind of seep into the ground. You could also use something like oat or wheat that would have a lot of upper above ground growth and also below ground growth. One way to look at a cover crop is really it's like growing your own compost, which in our area of Kentucky, it seems like compost is a hot commodity that in fact, I think a lot of places actually sold out of it this season because so many people were gardening. So there are a lot of different types of cover crops to choose from. Many of them you plant in the fall and you turn over in the spring. And so just make sure when you're looking at cover crops to pick one that suits you and your goals. And so don't pick one that will grow out of control and keep growing when when we warm back up in spring, if you don't have the equipment or manageability to be able to contain that. Just something to think about. But cover crops, very interesting, and they also some do also like the cover or the crimson clover in the picture there also attract pollinators. So great thing to learn more about. One very common question I receive is, what is wrong with my tree? And when I see the pictures, a lot of times there are splits, and the split will be vertical on the south or western side of the tree. This is called Sunscald, and it occurs in the winter. Sometimes the damage doesn't show up till spring or even summer, but the damage occurs in the winter. And what happens is the cambium inside the tree actually warms up on some of those winter days where we get some sunshine and some warm weather, and water and nutrients start to move. Then as the night comes on and it gets colder, it'll cause a split in the bark. This is common mostly on newly planted trees, but I see it a whole lot on trees with thin bark, maple and cherry especially. So one thing you can do is wrap your tree. You would do that in the fall, take it off in the spring. I would use something like a plastic tree guard or like the light colored paper you see in the picture there. You would put it on around Thanksgiving and you would take it off around Easter. I would want to be sure to take it off. A lot of times unfortunately with trees, we tend to leave things on there, and then as they grow, it can girdle the tree. The paper, I think, would probably break away, but something like plastic might be more inhibitive. So just something to think about. Water your evergreens in the fall. I had a tremendous amount of phone calls this spring regarding especially arborvitae that were in decline, or in the very least had a lot of brown spots popping up. Evergreens continue to respire even in the winter, unlike deciduous trees or trees that lose their leaves. And so they need to be well watered in the fall going into the winter. And so if the plant is dry, the plants will become desiccated, meaning they'll dry out, turn brown and die. And when I was getting all those calls, I actually contacted a plant pathologist at UK and asked her about it to make sure, to understand a little more about the problem. And she said she felt like what was going on was that we had that drought episode last fall, and the trees did not have proper water going into the spring, and then we had all these spots and dead trees coming up. And it is especially bad in areas where there's a heavy clay soil, which in parts of Madison County, we have clay everywhere anyway, but some areas are especially clay-like. And I think also what's made it worse is when we do have rain episodes, they're extremely heavy rain episodes, followed by periods of drought. Some areas were worse than others. So a lot of it's really just weather related, which can be frustrating because there's nothing you can really do about it. So other than alleviate the stress on plants. So what you can do, I guess, to alleviate it is reduce stress on trees, water when we need water. I think, for instance, we're getting ready to get rain, I think tomorrow, but if we go about, 10 days or so without rain, think about watering even your established trees, your larger evergreens. so that they can kind of go into winter in a better situation than we had last year. Trees, shrubs, they all need about an inch of water a week. So, if we go about 10 days without rain, which isn't uncommon at all, then that's when you would start to think about it. Just make sure you're not overwatering. It can cause as much problems as under. And then with lawn care, I talked to a lot of people who, have tried to seed their lawns maybe back in July or June, and they just didn't have any luck doing it. And I talked to them, and it sounds like they pretty much did everything right. But seeding grass, it's very important to do it at the right time of year. And that's because of a lot of different factors, temperatures, more rainfall, or the right amount of rainfall, I should say, and less weed competition. And the best time of year to actually seed grass is mid-August to mid-October. The second best time is mid-February to mid-April. So during that time, those windows, you will have better success rates at trying to seed your lawn. The other thing is you can't really just throw seed out on your lawn because it has to have good seed to soil contact. Because of that, you may need to rototill or work up your ground a little better. But grass seed just laying on top of the lawn isn't going to germinate. We also recommend when you fertilize, it's better to fertilize in the fall, or that be your primary fertilization time, because it leads to better root growth on the plant versus top growth above ground in the spring. And like I mentioned, I think earlier in the slide, we tend to sometimes turn off dry. So you want that good root growth. One thing, our office does offer free soil testing for Madison County residents, up to 10 samples per home. And so to know exactly how much you need, you could do a soil test. We need 2 cups of soil per test. And if you'll go to my website, I do talk about, or there's a link there that talks about how to take a proper soil test. Also, just wanted to mention the University of Kentucky has a really good turf lawn care website that has a lot of information about lawn renovation, fertilization, mold control, and things. So I put it there. And you could even just Google tips and recommendations for maintaining home lawns or home lawns in Kentucky. Excuse me. And it should take you there. So I just wanted to touch on a few things today. So if you have more questions or this has been helpful, just reach out to me. You can either call me here at the office, come by, or email me. I'm always happy to talk. If you get spots on your trees and don't know what it is, just send me an email or come by and we'll be happy to chat. So thank you so much for your time, and I'm going to stop sharing. And thank you for your patience in recording. Have a great day. Bye.